This week on Wealth Track, philanthropy as an investment, two thought leaders on the art of giving, the YMCA's Jack Lund and Clark Foundation's Doug Bauer, explain how to get the best and most effective returns from your charitable donations. Next on Consuelo Mack Wealth Track.
It takes all kinds of good to make a family. At New York Life, everything we do is to help you keep good going.
Hello, I'm Consuelo Mack. I want to tell you about a new opportunity to watch Consuelo Mack Wealth Track before the program appears on public television. As a subscriber, you can see programs 48 hours in advance of the general public and also find timely interviews and commentaries exclusive to Wealth Track Premium subscribers. ISI Group's Ed Hyman will join us with his 2013 Outlook. If you're interested, just go to wealthtrack.com for more information. Thank you. Happy New Year and welcome to this edition of Wealth Track. I'm Consuelo Mack. We decided to begin 2013 on a generous note and talk about what many call a uniquely American trait, charitable giving. Citizens of other countries do it, but no nation gives more or has philanthropy more ingrained in the fabric of its society and culture. According to the 2012 annual report, Giving USA, considered to be the Bible of philanthropy trends, American citizens and organizations gave nearly $300 billion in charity in 2011, up 4% year over year. Despite the slow economy, individuals gave $217.8 billion of that, or 73%. Add bequests from individuals and giving by family foundations, and their share jumps to 88%. Non-family foundations and the 5% given by corporations complete the picture. Where do we give? Religious institutions are by far the largest recipients, receiving 32% of our dollars. Education is next with 13%, followed by human services, foundations, health organizations, international affairs organizations, which are a relative newcomer, and public society benefit institutions. The remaining donations include arts, culture, and humanities, and environmental and animal causes. But the expectations and demands of donors are changing. More Americans are thinking of giving as an investment. They want to measure its impact, see its returns, and make sure it is an effective use of their money. We asked two financial thought leaders in the field to help us understand how philanthropy is changing and help us become more effective givers. Doug Bauer is the executive director of the Clark Foundation, a fifth-generation family foundation and one of the largest foundations in the country in terms of assets and grants. Doug has spent over 20 years with prominent foundations, including Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors and the Goldman Sachs Philanthropy Fund. Jack Lund is the president and CEO of the YMCA of Greater New York, the largest YMCA in the U.S. and the largest youth-serving organization in the New York area. Jack has spent 35 years at the Y in numerous leadership roles all over the country and internationally, including as CEO of the Milwaukee Y and chair of the YMCA World Urban Network, a network of Y CEOs from the world's largest cities. And I have had the privilege of working with Jack as a member of the Y board. I began the interview by asking both leaders to identify the biggest changes they are seeing in philanthropic giving.
I think there's a couple of things. In the last 10, 20 years, first of all, there's a whole lot more of it. We've seen a dramatic jump in the number of private foundations created, the number of donor-advised funds, et cetera. The assets have jumped up dramatically that are committed to philanthropy.
And that is because of Wall Street, kind of this gilded age we've been through?
Well, certainly Wall Street, certainly Silicon Valley and the tech,
right.
But I think what's also interesting is there's a lot of families out there, small businesses, family-owned businesses, that have also generated tremendous amounts of wealth. So it's not just both the coasts, but a lot of the family businesses that exist across the country. So there's more philanthropy. I think also what's interesting to me when I started out in this field in 1988, it was hard to get anybody to pay attention to philanthropy as a topic. Now the media is very, very aware of it. You can thank, I think, people like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett for that, but certainly philanthropy has become a very hot topic among a lot of people, and clearly people have become very engaged with the issue, and they understand that it plays an important role in what happens with communities across the country. So those are very important. I think the final thing is obviously there's been a lot of attention about if I do get engaged with philanthropy, what kind of return, what kind of measurement, what kind of impact should there be with the dollars that I grant or give or invest in a nonprofit? What kind of expectation should I have around the kind of impact or outcomes they're generating? And there's been a lot of attention about that issue as well. So it's a very interesting time in the field, I think.
So Jack, what are your thoughts, and especially from coming from an organization that is a not-for-profit, that's a large established organization that is looking always, that donors give to. So what's your experience from that side of the
Well, I think as we look at the charities in the country, there's certainly a lot more competition. I think there are a lot more choices for donors. I think the demographics of donors have changed as well. I think with more women giving and with the emergence of minorities, that has really changed the donor behavior a bit. And I think probably the biggest change has been in donor behavior. I think as Doug said, donors are asking for a return on their investment. They're looking for results. I think they're far more discerning. Statistically, I guess 83% of donors do research on the charities that are approaching them for gifts. So there's clear evidence that they're doing a lot more homework than has ever been the case in the past. And I think donors want to be more involved with their charities. It's not enough to write a check. They want to be involved, and particularly the corporations that support charities are not just wanting to make a financial investment. They're looking for opportunities for their employees to get involved as well. So they want to be on the scene, and that's a big change that we're seeing.
That's so interesting that the companies want their employees to be involved as well. So there's a sense that this is important from a corporate management point of view as well, that their employees get involved in doing good.
Yes. When we approach companies, we're very specific about opportunities for them to be involved in our organization.
Yep. Doug, as far as you're executive director for the Clark Foundation, you've run a number of other organizations as well. So how have you changed in how you approach who you're going to give to? I mean, how has your criteria changed? What's remained the same, and how has your criteria changed for who you're going to, or which organizations you're going to support?
I've been involved with this, like I said, since the late 80s. I've always been interested. I come from a corporate background. I have a business discipline to the way I think about things. I'm interested in the kind of impact that a nonprofit can and should generate in whatever field they may be in. I'm interested in how they approach that and how they're going to execute. I'm interested in results-oriented and results-driven nonprofits. That really hasn't changed.
And when you're talking about results-driven, what do you mean by what kind of results?
Well, I think that depends on the nonprofit. Let me give you an example.
Yes.
So, Meals on Wheels, kind of a classic nonprofit service. There are some folks who would be perfectly happy to write a check and take comfort in knowing that a meal has been delivered to a homebound senior or a homebound person with HIV/AIDS, etc. But there are other donors who would say, I'm very interested in the process, but I'm also interested in the outcomes. For example, does that meal help, for example, with a person with HIV/AIDS? Does that help them with the proper taking of medication? Does the food help the uptake of the meds? Is the food of a nutritional value that's going to keep them healthy? And so you get into some of the real mechanics behind what actually Meals on Wheels is trying to do, and is the person ultimately not only being fed, but are they healthier? And are they getting nutritious food rather than something prepackaged, etc.? So there are donors who are very, very happy to support Meals on Wheels because it's a good and great thing to do. And there are folks who are like, I'm interested in Meals on Wheels, but I want to make sure that we're having some really important outcomes tied to what Meals on Wheels should be doing for that patient or person who's homebound.
So I mean, that's actually a very demanding set of questions for Meals on Wheels, right? Or, you know,
Right.
So that puts, you know, more demands on an
Absolutely.
organization. Couldn't that interfere with what Meals on Wheels is really trying to do, which is trying to get meals to people with
well,
HIV/AIDS?
and that's part of the debate that Jack and I and others have been having in the field, which is how much is too much when you just want to deliver a meal, right? And feel good about that. And I think there is a balance to be struck there. You know, and you know, with the homebound meal, because it is ultimately improving a health outcome. And unlike a lot of other parts of the nonprofit sector, you can kind of more than scratch out a health outcome. You can figure out a health outcome. Right. And so therefore, I think that's a fair challenge or a fair set of questions to ask a Meals on Wheels program about the nutritional value of the meal. Are in fact your clients healthier? Are they more engaged with various issues as it relates to their health? I think that's a fair set of questions. It might not be a fair set of questions in another aspect, in another field. But in that particular example, I think that's a fair set of questions because you can get that data. That's
right.
That's not asking the nonprofit to take a huge stretch to get that data. That data exists, and you could probably get that data.
So Jack, at the Y, which has, you know, a long history, and you've been at the Y for various Ys for a long time. You're now running the largest one in the country. So tell me, you know, what kind of criteria are donors coming to you with at the Y, and how has that changed how you're operating?
It's changed dramatically, and you know, in the 1970s and 80s, we were able to say that we developed children in spirit, mind, and body, and that was really enough for our donor public. But that has really changed. They are asking for results and looking for outcomes, and I think for us, it's added discipline and rigor and more structure. It means that our curriculum has to be better developed, and that we also have to deliver the capacity to collect the data, to collect the outcomes, and then report on it. And it is challenging. It is costly, but fundamentally it's made us better.
So give us some examples of the kinds of things that you're doing in response to, you know, donors' interests.
I would say probably the most extensive piece of research we've done is in our after-school programs. We have a relationship with Fordham University, and for a 10-year period we measured school attendance, behavior, math scores, and reading scores. And the kids that were in our after-school program consistently outperformed their peers in every area but reading scores, until we realized that about 75% of our kids were the children of immigrants, where English was not the primary language spoken at home, and so we took a pass on that.
Right, but also, you know, and I'm just thinking of the things that we traditionally think of from the Y. Has it affected programs like that you teach all of the public school second graders to swim? Because as we know, drowning is the, I think it's the major cause of death among, you know, young children. So has that, I mean...
Yeah, well, if the, you know, I suppose you could say the outcome is to prevent drowning, but the output is to be able to demonstrate that you've learned to swim, and outputs can be a proxy for outcomes. You know, we have the same challenge in some of our children's health programs that are really targeted to reducing youth obesity, the epidemic of youth obesity, which it is. And in this case, the only thing we're willing to measure safely is activity levels. We know, based on research that Harvard has done, that if a child has 30 to 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous
right.
physical activity, 5 out of 7 days, that it leads to good health behaviors. And that's basically an output as a proxy for an outcome, and that's enough for our funders, and it's enough for us.
Doug, I'm just thinking, what hasn't changed in philanthropy? I mean, what are just some of the foundations of philanthropy that have not changed? And when we're talking about trends in giving.
Well, you know, it's interesting to me as one who I've tried very hard to be a student of the history of the field, and you know, I mean, we should remember that John D. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie very much brought a business perspective to their giving, right. As did some of the other, including the Clark family as well. I mean, there was real discipline behind what they do. However, it is a mixture of head and heart, and I don't think that's changed at all. You know, good philanthropy is you're giving because you want to do something. You want to do something positive. You want to do something that has a real benefit to community, and that the act of giving is ultimately a fairly emotional one. But you want that emotion infused and informed by some good due diligence, and so that's where the business side comes in. I mean, you want to look at the management practices. Is there someone like Jack running the show that knows what they're doing? Right. Are the finances strong? Do they have the capacity within their programs to do what they actually think they can do and should do? So it's that marriage between all the stuff you need to do as a good business person who would look at an investment and do that work. But there's also this, well, do I really care about this charity? Do I think they make a difference in the community? And not all of that is tangible. So it is that marriage of those two ideals that I think does create great philanthropy. And there are numerous examples of that over the last 200 plus years of this country.
Right. And so Jack, from your experience, and the Y's history as well, almost 200 years. What hasn't changed? What are the philanthropic, the donor, behaviors
the fundamental
that really
principles
haven't changed?
I think the fundamental principles are the same. People give to organizations that they care about, and you're right. It's a blend of head and heart, but it's the organization's case for support, their value, how well they're managed. I think one of the most important things for us is strategic planning, and a lot of donors say don't bring your annual report, because any organization can make themselves pretty in an annual report. Do you have a plan?
Right.
And do you have a strategic plan? That's an important question. I think a second thing that hasn't changed is leadership. It's not just staff leadership, but boards. Our donors want to know who's on the board and what's the board doing. Is the board giving? Is the board supporting the charity? I think that's very important as well.
Yep.
So I'm trying to think, and you're helping us too, because our viewers want to be better givers, and they want to be effective givers. So, what are the kind of questions that I should ask an organization? And Jack, let me, ask you. So, what are the kinds of, questions that you're being asked by your donors that you think are the right kind of questions? And you just mentioned, do you have a plan? So, what should I look for in a strategic plan, for instance?
Well, I think, first of all, it's fine for the organization to have a mission, but what's the roadmap? How will the organization achieve its mission in the lives of the people it's serving? I think donors are really looking for transparency, evidence of transparency, and I think any good not-for-profit worth its salt should not only have its annual reports out there and on its website, but their 990s, I think their audits. Yep. I think organizations should engage in an intermediate sanctions review, which is really looking at compensation for top management and making sure it's inside the boundaries. All those things should be available to donors.
Right, all of those things that I know as a board member of the Y that the Y does.
Correct.
But it strikes me that again, these are very demanding requests that are made, and the Y is, it's large, it has a long history, it's financially really well run, but for smaller organizations, and as we've just talked about, there has been an explosion in not-for-profits. I mean, how can smaller organizations live up to this, or can they actually meet the demands of donors in this current environment?
I think it's tough. Yeah. It's tough, and we have these conversations all the time. And you're right, we are a large organization, and it's challenging for us. We've managed to carve out relationships with some of the major educational institutions, and they help with our research. Fordham, NYU, Columbia University.
Right.
That has made a difference as well. And then I think the foundation community has been particularly supportive in helping organizations become better at measuring their outcomes because they're asking for it.
Right. I think when you're working with smaller nonprofits, say six-figure nonprofits in terms of operational budget, or mid-sized nonprofit to me is like a seven-figure type of nonprofit. It's all the things that Jack mentioned earlier, and I think it is asking also, talk about the depth of your programming. Why do you think you're making an impact with that? Tell us how you manage what are modest resources, and then with the management of those resources, how are you trying to get an outcome or an output, or dare you try to scratch the issue of impact? I think the other thing that's really important for the smaller groups, and perhaps less so for institutions the size of the Y, is do you understand the context in which you're operating? Do you understand who your competition is? If in fact you're a smaller group within the community and the issue you're trying to address, how do you know you're making a difference? Why do you think, and I would probably guess groups of that size, there are peer groups. How are you better? Mm-hmm. And that's asking nonprofit people who tend to be very modest people to be in some cases immodest to talk, openly about how they think they are better at what they do. But you have to get at that because that really determines whether they have the ability to succeed in what is a very difficult operating environment across the sector. And so those are questions that I would encourage donors to ask as well.
It's amazing. I recall a major funder in a Midwestern city telling me that in that particular city there were 16 different organizations that existed for purposes of preventing teenage pregnancy, and none of them knew the other ones were there. So you're absolutely right. It's understanding what environment you're in, who else is in it, and where you fit in.
Right. What about younger donors? And you were talking about, you're dealing with multi-generational organizations, and Jack, you're certainly seeing younger donors come forward now as well. Are their demands different?
Yeah, I think so. I think once again they're asking to be far more involved. I also think their methodology of giving is changing, and we're seeing more electronic giving than we've ever seen before. And we're just trying to catch up to make sure that we're communicating with them the way they want to be communicated to.
Yeah, it's interesting about the younger donors because, and we can thank 25 years of community service as the result of 25 years of community service. A requirement in high school or college to go out there and do volunteer work. The level of experiences that these students have at 18 and 19 coming into university is far beyond anything you and I did when we were all growing up.
Exactly.
That didn't exist. And that's made them very sophisticated, very knowledgeable, they're very choosy, and if they're going to get involved, they want to be involved in a very real and sincere way, or they're not going to do it. And that's not to say older donors aren't interested in that. It's a different intensity that I don't see with older donors, and it's a remarkable thing to watch. It can be very hard to manage, but I think it's exciting, and especially if you see them kind of line up behind let's say one of the more socially entrepreneurial kind of nonprofits out there, that can be a very exciting, almost combustible kind of experience for everybody involved. And if it happens, those kind of nonprofits can just take off.
Mm-hmm. And so how worried are you two about the tax implications of a possible limit on charitable deductions? Jack, how big does that loom in your radar screen?
Anytime a donor is asked, why do you give? Way down on the list is for tax purposes. There are so many other reasons why donors give. On the other hand, when donors are asked if their taxes go up, will it affect their philanthropy? The answer is, at least for half of them, is yes. So we are concerned.
So it's an issue. Doug?
From my perspective, there's lots of analysis out there about keep it the way it is, tamp it down, all kinds of formulas. What I know, again, as a student of the history of American philanthropy, I can tell you ever since we've had a charitable deduction in place, charitable giving has gone like that. In my mind, there's no question it is a catalyst. And for savvy, especially not just savvy, but affluent donors, clearly charitable deduction as a factor in their tax planning is huge. And so I think Jack is right. There's going to be an influence one way or the other depending on what they do with the charitable deduction. All I know is it's been a very important catalyst. I think that history's demonstrated that. I'd hate to see that, interrupted in any kind of way. It has completely contributed to why there is such a robust commitment to philanthropy in this country.
And let me ask each of you the one investment for a long-term diversified portfolio that we ask everyone, what would it be? And it can be in the philanthropic field or not. What investment should we make to be a more effective donor?
Well, I guess I would answer it this way. I think whatever the investment is, I would tell the donor to do their homework, to know the agency, to dig in, to make sure that they're achieving their outcomes, to make sure that they're financially stable, to make sure that they have good leadership.
Doug?
Wow. Well, there's 1.6 million charities in the United States. So pick just one would be hard. I would say this.
I have one in mind.
I know you do. And it's a good one, Jack.
Could it be the Y? Right.
But no, I would say pick a charity that A, is meaningful to you in a deep and real kind of way, and that is also making a huge difference in the community. If you're able to satisfy both of those dynamics, then I think you'll have probably picked a good nonprofit.
What a great way to start the new year on Wealth Track with the two of you. So thank you so much. Doug Bauer from the Clark Foundation and Jack Lund from the YMCA of Greater New York. It is wonderful to have you both here. Thanks.
Thank you, Consuelo.
Thank you. Thank you.
At the conclusion of every Wealth Track, we give you one suggestion to help you build and protect your wealth over the long term. This week's action point is resolve to be a more effective giver this year. Jack Lund and Doug Bauer gave us some great suggestions to combine your head and heart in your giving. Get to know the organization, its leadership and programs. Ask them for their strategic plans, annual reports, or 990s, the major reporting form required by the IRS for nonprofits. Knowledgeable giving is more effective and much more rewarding. I hope you can join us next week for our annual television exclusive with Wall Street's #1 ranked economist for 30 years running. ISI Group's Ed Hyman will join us with his 2013 outlook, only on Wealth Track. If you would like to watch this program again, please go to our website, wealthtrack.com. Premium subscribers can see future programs 48 hours in advance, and additional interviews with Wealth Track guests are available in our Wealth Track Extra feature. And that concludes this edition of Wealth Track. Thank you so much for watching, and make the week ahead a profitable and a productive one.
It takes all kinds of good to make a family. At New York Life, everything we do is to help you keep good going.
Additional funding provided by Loomis Sales, investors seeking exceptional opportunities globally, and Wintergreen, your home for global value.